all the immigrants coming from the Middle East are Muslims. About 0.5% are Christians, and they are truly the persecuted ones. And yet the previous administration focused only on Muslims, bringing hundreds of thousands of Muslims into the country. So I was extremely interested to see the new book by Leo Hohmann, Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. And Michelle Bachmann has an endorsement. Leo has brilliantly researched a book that is well worth your time. Read Stealth Invasion to learn how you can play an effective role in protecting your backyard. That's Michelle Bachmann. And I said opening the program, and Michelle and I both live in what's known as Little Mogadishu. We'll talk a little bit more about that as the program winds down here. But Leo Hohmann, we talked about the 9 organizations that are backing all of this, and yet they are not allowed to share the gospel. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. They sign a contract, Jan, with the U.S. State Department, these 9 volunteer agencies, also called VOLAGs, of which 6 of them are religiously based. They sign a contract with the U.S. State Department agreeing not to proselytize any of the refugees that they resettle in our cities and towns. And this just sort of adds, in my opinion, to the lack of assimilation that the Muslim refugees in particular are failing to accomplish. They're living in enclaves in places like Minneapolis and Columbus, Ohio, and Seattle, and Atlanta, and San Diego, and they're not getting out and assimilating with the rest of our country and being exposed to anything but their own narrow Islamic culture.
Leo, that's exactly right. Can you tell me of one instance from history where Muslim immigrants have ever truly assimilated en masse in a Western setting?
That is a great question. No, I mean, there's some in process that they would tell you, well, we're in the process and we think we're going to be successful, but they certainly have not been successful yet. You take Sweden as a good example. Sweden was a nice, calm, docile, peaceful place to live, very leftist in nature, welfare state, but very little crime in that country. It was one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And after a couple of decades of widespread resettlement of Somalis and other refugees from the Islamic world, Sweden is now the rape capital of Europe.
That's right.
Amazingly. So it's gone from one side of the spectrum to the other, a 190-degree turn. And they are not only facing a lot of sexual assaults and rapes, but they're facing a lot more violent crime. They've had rioting in the streets of a suburb of Stockholm. It's now certain places you cannot go in that town unless you take your life very lightly, and especially if you're a woman. So the same thing is now happening in Germany, where women are being told to cover up when they go out in public because you'll just be stimulating the demons within some of the migrants that have flooded into that country, having to separate men and women in spas and public pools in some of these places in Sweden, in Germany. You've heard about the migrant sex grooming gangs and running wild in the UK. Places like Rotherham, England, have seen just hundreds of small girls, 11 to 13, 14 years old, brutally brought into these rape gangs where they pass them around from brother to brother, cousin to cousin, and it's just disgusting what's happened there, and the media tried to cover that all up.
Leo, is there any reason we should think that this won't come to America?
Right. We're told that America is somehow different. When the migrants come to America, they just kiss the ground and suddenly become great constitutional Americans with full respect for the Bill of Rights. It's just absurd. We're starting to see the first fruits of that absurd thinking. We've had a rape of a small girl, 5-year-old special needs girl in Twin Falls by 3 refugee boys from Sudan and Iraq. We've had a refugee from Somalia attack a woman, try to sexually assault her in Aberdeen, South Dakota recently, and the media there tried to cover that up. WND, myself, covered that story, and then the local paper was forced to acknowledge, we just missed that one in the courts, and they hurriedly put together a story that didn't even say that the migrant, that he was a refugee or that he was Muslim.
Leo, my producer, would like to ask a question, please.
Leo, it's really interesting, all of these rapes. I mean, here you've got a religion that is actually doing the raping. Why is it? What's the DNA in Islam that is allowing them to take it to that degree?
Great question, Larry. These refugees arrive here in America and in the West with a lot of baggage. They're taught from the time they were small boys that a respectable woman is a Muslim woman. And a Muslim woman, a true Muslim woman, not just somebody who says they're Muslim like a lot of people in America, but a true Muslim will cover her head, her hair, and her body. She will wear a hijab. She will lower her gaze when she comes into the presence of a male stranger. And in many countries, she's not even allowed to leave the house without a male companion that is related to her, her father, brother, or husband. And so when they get here to America, and they hear a lot of things about America before they even arrive here, and they have all this baggage, and they're told that, it's just a free-for-all in Europe and in America. The women are all promiscuous. The men have no integrity, and it's an open society, and it's just get what you can take. Your non-Muslim women are considered basically wanting it if they're not dressed in a traditional garb like they're used to in their home countries. And so this is the problem, Larry, that we're now experiencing in the Western democracies when we're bringing in large numbers of these male Muslim refugees and we're not expecting any sort of assimilation. They're not told what the rules are up front and what the penalty is and what the laws are. And so we have problems.
I want to build on what you're saying, Leo, and you're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have Leo Hohmann on the line talking about his new book, Stealth Invasion. Eric Barger joins me today. I have a very short 3-minute clip because Fox News came to our little Mogadishu. That's what parts of the Twin Cities are called. That's where I headquarter. Pete Hegseth did a 6-7 minute feature. We're only going to play 3 minutes as he kind of roamed the Islamic community in the Twin Cities and tried to get some information from our local residents. And I think this backs up what we've talked about here for the first part of the program.
We're back with a story. The mastermind behind a disturbing plot for ISIS in Syria will spend 35 years in prison. 22-year-old Gulid Omar sobbing before a Minneapolis judge on Friday, claiming to be a changed man. Well, he is the last of a 9-person terror cell to be sentenced.
Earlier this year, this guy named Pete Hegseth visited a neighborhood of Minneapolis known as Little Mogadishu, an area considered by some as ground zero for ISIS recruitment right here inside America.
That's right. And Minnesota has been a hotbed for terror recruitment. But why? Why has this happened? Where does it come from? So I hit the streets of Minneapolis to check it out.
Terror connection leading right back to the Twin Cities. Federal authorities say that a man's been arrested on terror-related charges. Major concerns in the Somali community over a terror recruitment video that was released by Al-Shabaab.
It's often the lead story in the Twin Cities. Terror recruits coming from Minnesota, where thousands of Somalis relocated after civil war ripped their country apart in 1991.
We're here in the Cedar Riverside area of Minneapolis, what some call Little Mogadishu. These towers have long been a symbol of a very large Somali Muslim population here in Minneapolis. What some would say an increasingly insular Muslim population.
Pretty much everybody here is nice. They love this country.
The worst propaganda is by news media, biased against all Muslims. And some people are targeting Muslims. Because I'm Muslim, it doesn't mean that I'm a terrorist.
Of more than 200 Islamic schools in the United States, at least 2, likely more, are located in Minnesota. American government is listed as a subject at one of these schools.
The Islamic schools here in Minnesota, they teach Sharia law.
Yeah, Sharia law.
And what do they teach? Also American law, the U.S. Constitution?
Actually, I have no idea about that one.
While many first-generation Somalis come to America looking for a better life, we had a hard time finding people in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood who spoke English.
We're here with Fox News just doing a story about the Riverside area. No English? Any at all? No? Just wanted to see if I could ask you a couple quick questions.
No English.
Would you be willing to chat with us?
No, speak language.
No English?
No English.
You go there and you see someone who's been there for like 20 years and he or she doesn't speak a single word of English because they don't interact with people outside that circle. It creates an environment where the lone wolf is going to be easier to hide in.
Omar Jamal is an outspoken community leader in Minneapolis.
Is radicalization still going on right now? Are Somali youth still being recruited by ISIS as we speak?
Yes.
National security expert Ryan Murrow has investigated radical mosques across the country and says terror recruits, most of them second-generation immigrants, feel isolated from society.
One of the critical factors in ISIS propaganda is saying that you belong in the caliphate and your life will be better under the caliphate. You'll get free health care, the social services will be wonderful, we'll all treat you as friends and family members, we'll hook you up with a husband or a wife. And so they have this illusion that the caliphate is a wonderful thing, and then they go over there and then they see the truth.
At least 2 young people who worshipped at the Al Farouk Mosque in Bloomington, near Minneapolis, have attempted to join terror organizations.